As I say, you are on mute, so we're going to ask you to put any comments or questions into the chat box. If you have any questions as we go through, if you can mark those questions with a Q so that we can separate the questions from comments or sharing profiles. If anybody wants to share their LinkedIn profiles, feel free to do that so that you can connect with other people on the webinar this morning. But what we're going to talk about, first of all, we're going to look at some statistics of selling, or our 10 commandments as well. So what are the key principles that underpin successful selling? We're then going to look at the process end to end. What does the client journey look like? How does the sales process line up to that? And how do we make sure that we're following it effectively so that we take the client on that journey we need to take them on to successfully meet their needs and go beyond just a transaction and create a lifelong customer relationship. And we'll do that through 3 key models that I deploy in my business. Then we'll look at some key foundational principles, some of the things we really need to zero in on. Then we'll do a wrap up, final questions, and we will close at 10 o'clock. So the other thing we're going to do at the end is I have a slide that will say webcams at the ready and gallery view. We'll take a quick picture. So if by about 10 to 10 you can be ready to switch your webcams on, we'll do a screenshot of the picture and we can use that for our social channels. Okay, so let's get going. So this is a bit about me. Most of you on the line, I think, may have heard of me or know me. That's probably why you're here. So thank you for joining us. My name's Justin Lee. I live in Cambridgeshire with my wonderful family, my wife, Katie, my children, Grace and Robbie, and our dog, George. And I have this firm belief that, you can achieve anything you want in life as long as you've got the passion, the drive, the focus, and the support. And my background is as a sales and business leader, 25 years in sales and business, 20 of those years in leadership positions. And about 3 years ago, I moved into coaching and I run a coaching consulting business. And so my passion is around helping people grow their business, and sales is a key part of driving growth in a business, as you'll know. So that's a bit about me. What about you? We've got a poll coming up, and Caroline is very kindly going to manage all the tech in the background. So Caroline's going to run our first poll of the morning. And that is to find out what best describes you. So if you can just look at the poll that's coming up and just click on which you think is the best description for you. Are you a business owner? Are you a business leader or manager? Are you a sales leader or manager? Are you a high-performing salesperson? Do you want to be a high-performing salesperson? Or are you in the wrong webinar? Hopefully, nobody's answering the bottom one. If you are in the wrong webinar, don't worry, you'll get a lot of useful tips, whatever you're doing. So once we get enough of these questions completed, I'm going to do it as well. Then Caroline's going to give us the result. We'll be able to show the result. So if everybody can just hit the number, hit submit. And once we get to the right level, I'm recognizing some people on webcam now. Good morning, everybody. Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Alex. Jerry, thank you. So I can't see.
No, are you ready?
Oh, go on, Caroline.
I think, is that everybody? I think we've got 62 or 66.
Perfect. That's
okay.
Great. The suspense is killing me.
Right. Let's have a look.
Okay. Great. So we have 47% of people on this webinar are business owners, 21% are business leaders or managers, 15% are sales leaders, 5% are high-performing salespeople, and 13% want to be. Well done. And thankfully, nobody is in the wrong webinar. So brilliant. Well, listen, thank you for sharing that. That's great. So we've got a really good complement of people this morning. So let's carry on with our webinar. Thank you, Caroline, for coordinating that.
That's all right.
So let's look at some vital statistics. These are things that are going to be useful for you. According to Marketing Week, 80% of sales need 5 follow-up calls after a meeting. And 44% of salespeople give up after the first call. So that is after you've met with somebody. So you've had a meeting with a client already. It needs 5 follow-up calls to make that move into a commitment and a business relationship. 92% of sales interactions within any given sales process happen over the phone. So 92% of what happens in a sales process to close is over the phone, according to Salesforce. And Dale Carnegie's research showed that 91% of customers say I would give a referral to a sales or a business person, and only 11% of people ask. If you have people that you're working with, clients that are satisfied, and you aren't asking them to refer you on to other people in the network, you're missing a real opportunity. And finally, those people that do exploit or actively seek out those referrals earn between 4 and 5 times as much in upside or commission as those who don't. So some food for thought this morning about not just the sales process, but the way you manage clients and relationships. Now, in order for us to be successful in selling and influencing, I have these 10 commandments. I'm going to go through them very quickly with you. And you start to think about what this means for you and for your business. The first is that when we're selling, we must focus entirely on our client. We've got to park ourselves, park our egos, park our agendas, and focus specifically on the client. The second is that when we do that, we also need to use a value-led approach. What does that mean? It means we start with offering value to the customer, not trying to pitch our services or talk about us. It's about creating value in the first instance. Thirdly, I think, you guys will know this intuitively, but you've got to tap into an intense passion. And if you don't have it today, you aren't passionate about what you're doing, you need to find it. Because clients will not buy from someone who's not passionate about what they're doing, who doesn't believe in what they're doing. You also need to continuously develop your expertise. You need to have this perspective where you are on an ongoing basis continually looking at how you become more of an expert in your field. And then you also need to be exceptionally curious. You need to ask lots of questions. You need to try and understand your client and really dig under the surface of what's really going on, because they won't tell you straight away unless you really foster this curiosity. As well as being curious, you must listen, because there's no good asking questions if you don't listen. So you've got to listen intently. And once you're listening, you've got to create some space for the client to open up. Because if you don't listen and create that space, you will never find out the things that you need to find out in order to really understand your client and make a difference for them. 7 is about enjoying the process as well as the results. As business and salespeople, it's really easy to get attached to the result. And if you don't enjoy the process as well as the result, then actually the person that suffers is you. So start to, if you don't already, start to look at how you can enjoy the process of selling and developing your business. 8 is believe in your solution and yourself. You can only do this if you follow the previous steps. So once you start to do all the other things, you'll then start to believe in what you're selling. You'll believe in yourself. 9 is about perseverance. We talked about the number of follow-up calls needed after a meeting in order to secure a sale. You have to persevere until you succeed. Keep going, keep asking, keep pushing, and keep engaging until you find yourself in a position where you've succeeded. That is the secret to success in many areas. And then finally, get to yes or no, right? So when you're engaging with clients, don't be afraid of a no. You want to get to a point where people say yes, or they say no. And if they say no, that's fine. Thanks for your time. Let's move on to clients who do want to be served and do want what you're offering, and they will say yes. So it's just a process, and getting to yes or no is really important. But as fundamentals of sales, getting this into our psyche is really important. Let's not take it personally. It's a yes or it's a no. So with that in mind, we've got these 10 commandments. These are the things that we need to do to manage ourselves. What about the customer journey? So all customers that we start engaging with start at a process where they are completely unaware of us. They're unaware of our product and our solution. And our aim is to get them through a process. We've got 2 models that I'll talk to very quickly this morning. We move them from unaware to grabbing their attention. So they've become attentive to us. We then use a process that helps us move the client even further. The first step in our sales process, and we'll talk through this a bit more later, is insight. We create insight for the customer that moves them to this point of attention. We then want the customer to get to a point of interest. So they're not just attentive, they're actually interested. And we do that through understanding what they need. And we do that needs discovery through questioning and listening. Once they're interested and we're interested in them, we want to move them to a point of desire. So this is about them wanting what we are offering. And we do that through a discussion about how we solve problems. We provide solutions. We're not pitching products. We are solving their issues and providing solutions. And when we do that, we'll get to a point where they are ready to take action. When a client is ready to take action, we move them then to a position of making a proposal. Okay, so if you're ready for action, this is what we propose. And the idea then is they become a customer. Okay, and we make the various recommendations. We say, right, this is immediate. We have to create this immediacy, because once someone's enthusiastic and they want to become a customer, we have to act on it. Because there's a great phrase I love called enthusiasm has a half-life. So you have to act when you've got a customer ready to purchase. And that becomes a transactional relationship. What we then want to do is move that person from being a customer to being a loyal client. A lifelong loyal client is what we're looking to create from all of our customer relationships. And we do that through our own self-reflection, reflecting on how we need to improve, the additional value we need to create, what other tools, resources we should be working with that customer to develop. And that's the length of the client or customer journey. Now, you will also have heard this phrase on social media. There's a lot of thought leaders talking about know, like, and trust, and taking people through this. You know, they need to know who you are. They need to build a relationship and like who you are. And then when they finally trust you, they will purchase. And that is a very straightforward, simplistic three-step model. Here's where it fits as part of this entire customer journey. So this is the end-to-end process. So let's move to another poll. Caroline's going to help us with this. Which part of the process, having seen that, which part of the process do you most need to focus on? And you'll see a poll come up in a second. Here we go. So which part of the process do you need to focus on? Is it lead generation? Is it lead nurturing? Is it lead qualification? Is it preparing for a client meeting if you've got leads? Is it questioning and listening when you're in the meeting? Is it presenting your proposition or solution? Is it gaining commitment? Is it handling objectives? Or is it maintaining client momentum after a meeting? So which of those is it for you? If you can select the area that's most important for you. I'm going to do this as well. And hit submit. Let's see what we are facing in our businesses. And then as we go through the rest of the presentation, I'll make sure that we cover all of those areas, but I'll also zone in on the area that gives us, that we think needs the most attention. So we're up to 74 participants as well. That's good. So welcome to those of you who joined us a little after the start. How are we doing with that poll, Caroline?
Up to 67 of 73. So
brilliant. Okay. We might have a few people that have fallen asleep, so maybe publish that.
Right, I think we've got to where we're going to get now, so let's have a look.
Okay, so thank you very much, Caroline. So we have, number one is lead generation. Okay, so that's interesting. So we'll definitely cover that. The second highest score is maintaining client momentum after a meeting. We will also cover that. And then we've got fairly even split, questioning and listening and presenting my proposition or solution. Those two areas are very, very closely connected. We've then got lead nurturing and gaining commitment. Then we've got lead qualification, handling objections, and preparing for the client meeting finally. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That's really useful background and context. So I'm going to make sure that we cover all of those areas, but we'll put particular emphasis on the two that we saw were most important to you. So lead generation. Okay, so I use a process in my business that I have developed, and I call it RISE. So RISE makes it easy for me to remember, but it's a 4-step mnemonic. I'm going to walk you through those 4 steps to generate leads. The first part of that model is the R, and that's the research that we do. So as we start our lead generation process, we have to understand some key facts about our ideal client. So first of all is understanding who your client is, because The number of times I'll ask business owners, who's your ideal client? If you're in a niche market, if you're in a specific industry like medical or dental or IT security, you know exactly who your client is. But for many business owners, they can't articulate exactly who they're targeting. And until you can do that, it's very difficult to engage with somebody because your approach tends to be quite scattered. So you must zero in and focus on your ideal client. Who's the person that you want to talk to most? And once you've done that, we need to do some research. What's their pain? What is the issue they're facing? And what needs do they have? And once we understand that, we start to create content that is attractive specifically for that person. And once you've got that attractive content, we want to start to create some content that we're prepared to share with that customer free of charge. And we call these assets or this content a lead magnet. And what that becomes is a document or a resource or a tool that that ideal client will want. And when we give it to them for free or offer it to them for free, they will engage with us. So the second step of the process, once we're prepared, we've created our lead magnets, we then initiate a process to engage with that ideal client. And we put to them a client-focused offer. So this is an offer that has nothing to do with us. It's about them. And it may be some resources that you've developed. It may be tools. It may be testimonials or results from other clients. It may be a process that you've developed with another client. But you're offering that to that potential client free of charge. And the exchange that you want for that is to capture their details. So you give a call to action. The CTA stands for a call to action. And you capture the details in exchange for giving them that resource. Okay, so that's the initiate part. Once you've initiated, you've now got a client that you have some form of contact with. Now it's about providing a solution and solving a problem for them. And that solving of a problem, someone's drawing on my screen, it's made me chuckle. That solving of a problem develops the relationship. So you start to show that you have value, you offer that value. And this solve part is also about developing credibility, offering proof that you can deliver what you say you're going to deliver, because everybody says they've got the solution, right? Everybody's got the solution to our problems, but the only way for us to really understand that is to experience it. And this part is about helping your customer experience how you solve problems or provide solutions. And then finally, once you've done that, and this all happens without a meeting, right? Once you've done that, you earn the right to extend an invitation to a meeting. And this is about creating an opportunity. So the final part of our model is about creating an opportunity. You ask for a meeting, and I talked earlier about getting to yes or no. At this stage, don't worry if it's a no. You get yes or no. But otherwise, if you don't get to a point where somebody says yes or no, you end up in this no man's land of maybe I will, maybe I won't. And actually getting a firm answer helps you understand who will you work with and who won't you work with. Now, if they say later, that's okay. If it's a yes, not now, but later, and I'll be honest with you, in the current climate, that probably is what a lot of you are finding, that people are saying, do you know what, let's get out of this period first and then we'll have a discussion. That's okay. Continue to use this process, continue to create value, share that value with customers. That is what generates your leads and fills your pipeline. So you have leads. Now what? So what we do next is, let's assume we've got a lead, we have agreement to go to a meeting with a customer, we've got engagement. What do we do now? Well, don't just walk into a meeting unprepared. And I love this quote. It's not the will to win that matters. Everybody has that in this day and age. It's the will to prepare to win that really matters. And that's where you will differentiate yourself from anybody else engaging with your client. And in my business, we use this prepare to framework. I'm not going to go through this in depth, but I'm going to talk you through the generic model because that will be useful for you. So think about it on this axis. This is a 4-blocker. You have your client that you're engaging with, and you have yourself along the x-axis. And then on the y-axis, you have internal things that are going on for you and for your client. and external things that are happening for you and for your client. And you need to, or we need to research each of those 4 areas in advance of going into a meeting with a client. So the first is about what's going on internally for your client, what's happening in their company, what's happening for them professionally, what's happening for them socially. And you can find all of that out about your client in advance, especially if you're connected and you've taken them through this lead nurturing process. The second part then is looking at what's happening in their external world, not yours, their external world. So what market dynamics are they facing right now? And what might be happening that's impacting their business? Once you get a good view on that customer's view of the world, you then can think about yourself, right? How do you manage yourself? How do you manage your process, your sales skills? How do you make sure you listen? How do you make sure you ask good questions? Then we think about what's happening in your external world. So how do you create something of external value or validation for your customer? So that when you go to meet the customer, it's not all about you. You can talk about other clients, you can talk about other things that you've experienced externally outside of your organization, and that gives you credibility and creates value for you and your client in the discussion. It also reduces the pressure you feel to be talking about yourself. So that's the framework for preparing for the meeting. So we are at a point where we have a meeting, you've done some research, you've looked at these 4 areas, we're now ready to go and engage with the customer directly. So I love this quote from William Edwards Deming. So Deming was the guy that introduced process into automotive manufacturing. And this quote is very often used in lots of different contexts. If you can't describe what you're doing as a process, if you can't systemize it, he says you don't know what you're doing. I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but what I would say is you can't repeat your results consistently if you don't have a process that you're following. And the sales process is absolutely critical to businesses. So the model that we teach, that I teach in my business, is this model called Inspire. And I talked to it earlier, but we'll go through it again. At the heart of the model is the relationship that you have with your client. And the way that we develop that relationship is through a process called Rapport, which we'll talk about. And you'll know what that is, but I'll give you some tips on how to accelerate rapport. So we have the relationship sits at the heart of the model because it has to continue right the way through the life of that relationship. If you don't have the relationship, it's very difficult to sell to a client. Once we have the relationship established, we kickstart our process with what we call insight and impact. And that's some form of specific insight that that customer will find valuable, and we deliver it to create an impact for them, a positive impact for them. Once we've done that, we move to what we call a needs discovery discussion. So I'll talk about this in a bit more detail, but it's needs discovery, understand what the customer needs. Then we go to a solutions discussion. So we know what the customer needs. We can now talk about how a solution that we have fits what they need. Once we've done that, we go to making a proposal. So we've talked about what you needed. We looked at what works for you and what the solution is. Here's how I propose we move forward. And we get agreement on that proposal. Once we get that proposal, we talked earlier about enthusiasm having a half-life. We must take immediate action. We need to be really clear on what's going to happen next. What's the customer going to do? What are we going to do? How do we move that forward at pace so that we both get what we need? And that could be the end of the process, but we talked about moving people from customers to clients. We do that through reflecting on our process, on our results, and looking at how we can continually improve. And that improvement brings us back to the start of the process, and we continually get better and better at the work we do with our clients. So that's the process. Where we're going to really focus in today, 3 areas. One is on the relationship and how we develop deeper rapport, because it's absolutely critical. The second area we're going to look a bit more at is this insight and impact. What does that look like and how do we deliver it? And then thirdly, we're going to look at needs discovery, some questioning and listening, specifically questioning skills that we might need. Then we'll wrap up and finish on the sales model. So rapport is the ultimate tool. And if you can engage with other people in a way that you can bring them on board so that they like you, then you will be able to use that in all areas of your life. And rapport is quite straightforward, but until you learn to really develop it, you won't be able to fully fulfill yours and other people's needs. So you have to be able to develop rapport. So what is it? Rapport, simply put, is the ability to relate to others in a way that creates a level of trust and understanding, and it creates the foundation for a positive relationship. Now, in sales and in leadership, it's critical because we will not buy from people we don't like. And as team members, we won't perform at our very best for a leader we don't like. So rapport is critical throughout all of our relationships and throughout all sales processes. Now, in sales interactions, the reason rapport is important is because it creates this unconscious connection, this unconscious ability for you to get agreement and acceptance from your clients. And what that means is that they don't think consciously that they're going to agree. They find themselves feeling like they want to agree. And it's rapport that drives that. And if you don't have rapport, you won't be able to get that unconscious connection, and your sales results will be reduced as a result. So it's critical for your performance. And we have to figure out the best way for us to develop rapport. Now, when you think about the way we communicate, the reason unconscious rapport is so important is because the work done by Albert Mehrabian to start the century, he looked at the communication mix that we receive from other people. So when someone's communicating, what impact do the different elements of communication have on us? And 7% of what we interpret is through the spoken word, the things that are said. 38% is interpreted through the voice, the tone, the pitch, the pace, the enthusiasm, and the remaining 55% is body language. Now, interestingly, the words we say are conscious. They're the things we think about. Everything else, the voice, the tone, the passion. That's why I talked about passion for your product. And the body language. You know, what do we do with our hands and our body? Do we lean in? Are we really alive when we're talking about what we want to talk to the customer about? All of that is unconscious. So we don't think about it consciously. It's just happening. And that's why rapport is so important, because from a customer's perspective, they don't think, do I like you or not? They feel it. It's unconscious. And we have to be able to tap into that ability we have naturally to build rapport with people. So what do we do? 3 tips for accelerating rapport. The first is really obvious, okay? Really obvious. Smile. Be warm and be sincere, okay? Even if you don't say anything about that, if in your mind, the 93% of what you're communicating, if in here you're saying to yourself, I'm smiling, I'm demonstrating warmth and sincerity, your customer will feel that. They'll feel it. They won't need you to tell them, they'll feel it. The second area is to listen and be interested and curious. We talked about curiosity earlier and listening. Believe it or not, rapport is best developed by reducing the amount you speak. By starting to tune into the other person is what develops stronger rapport, not pitching or talking or over use of, products, resources. Actually stopping, slowing down and listening is what develops the rapport. And then finally, when you're in rapport, once you've got this relationship flowing, there's 3 steps that we can use. The first is that we move to the other person, we match the other person, okay? So we meet them where they are. The second part is then we pick up the pace, we adopt their pace. And then finally, when we're in rapport, we will be able to move from the pace that they are setting to leading the pace. You can only do it when you've established rapport. So these are 3 areas that will be really helpful. If you start with smiling, warmth and sincerity, you move to listening and being intensely curious, You'll then be able to match, pace and lead quite easily once you've established that rapport and you're in the position that you want to be in with your customer. So that's rapport. And so, there's some exercises that we do in workshops that really help to develop that. If you have the chance, and this is something you want to develop, talk to someone you know, whether it's a friend or a family member, and practice building rapport. See what happens, because you'll be really surprised at how quickly people slip into unconscious habits. Really, really interesting. So now let's go to insight and impact. So for insight and impact, this is never more important than now. If we are all in very competitive, crowded marketplaces, and fitting in is the same as being invisible. You must stand out. And what insight and impact does is it enables us to stand out right at the start of the sales process. And what we're looking for from our customers when we deliver insight for impact is we want a response from them that says, wow, I didn't realize that, or I didn't know that. We're looking to create a shift in their awareness. And we can share insight about all sorts of things, the marketplace, business intelligence you might have, guidance or regulation changes to that guidance, maybe a hidden future opportunity that you know about. But what we're looking to do is deliver something to a customer right at the start of our interaction with them that makes them think, that is interesting, that is valuable, I want to know more, okay? And we do it in a way so that what it will do for the client unconsciously, and we've talked already about how powerful the unconscious communication message is, it will establish your credibility. It piques their interest and inquisition, and it creates value and demonstrates this positive intent. And what we've found in the research with clients is that it actually can be interpreted as a favor or a gift. So somebody actually thinks right at the start of the process, you are giving them something of value, and that then kickstarts the sales process. So you have this platform now where you can sell. And here's an example of an insight and impact statement. If it was sales training and coaching, for example. So 44% of, according to Harvard Business Review, 44% of companies state they have an ineffective process for managing their sales pipeline. Companies that master 3 key steps, one of those being pipeline management, gain 28% higher revenue growth. That's almost a third higher revenue growth for managing process and pipeline. 3 things they do. They follow a defined sales process, something like this Inspire process. They train their sales leaders on pipeline management. And then they spend time or invest time on sales pipeline and process management. And that's as little as 45 minutes a week. And 45 minutes a week focus in this area generates 28% increased revenue versus competition that don't do this work. So if ever there was a reason to focus in on sales process and pipeline management, we know intellectually it makes sense. The results and the evidence are pretty compelling. So that would be something that if I was going into a conversation with a customer, might be a useful way to start the conversation about sales process management. So my question to you offline, have a think about how you will kickstart your own sales process. What insights might you need to be sharing with your customer? What tools and resources have you got so that you can kickstart your own sales process, so that when we come out of this current situation, you're not having to rebuild and start again. You can kickstart and get that growth accelerating as quickly as possible. So that's our insight and impact. Needs discovery. So imagine you're in a client meeting, you deliver some powerful statement about what you know they'll need, and all of a sudden they're going, yeah, tell me more, Justin. And it's really, really tempting at this point to just start pitching about how great you are and how I can do this program for you and I can show you this. And you must not do that. That is the most common error made by salespeople. Once you have the customer engaged, we need to now really understand what is happening in their world. What are the needs that they have? And we can only discover those needs by questioning, and having asked questions, listening and creating that space that I talked about earlier. And questions are going to give you more important answers than you can ever get by talking. And this is, for most people, one of those areas where if you can cultivate it, it has the biggest impact in your sales process and your results. So remember, the only way to understand someone's needs, truly understand someone's needs, is be interested in the first instance. Ask open questions. We'll talk about that next. And listen really carefully. Because even I've had meetings in the past. I had one recently where there were myself and somebody else were in a meeting with a client we were talking to. And when we came out and had a discussion afterwards about what we'd heard, we had both gained different things from the discussion with the customer. And even though we were both listening intently, we both picked up different things. That means we'd also both missed different things. So your ability to listen really carefully is absolutely critical. So let's say we're in the customer meeting. What questions do we ask? Now, many of you will know this, but there are 3 types of questions. I'm just going to go over them very quickly. Open questions. Open questions will get customers talking. I've got a separate piece on open questions that we're going to cover next. Closed questions should only be used to gain commitment or clarify something or move the process forward when you want to get to the next stage. Okay, that's the only time we should use closed questions, because otherwise we'll stifle the conversation. And then finally, probing questions are when you've asked a question about a particular area and you need to know more because you haven't quite unearthed it. And that's as simple as saying something like, please tell me more, or can you expand on that? And just probing and digging a little deeper into a specific area. Really important that you have an understanding of these 3 key questioning skills. So let's talk specifically about open questions, because they are the most important questions when we are talking to a customer. There are a few ways to get people talking, and there are a few ways to open questions, but the most important, if you can just remember what or how as your opener for asking open questions. So what or how will always elicit an open answer from a client. And if you can get yourself trained into starting every question that you want to ask that's open with what or how, that will be a game changer for you. I guarantee it. I learned this years ago, and it has really transformed my ability to ask open questions. Very often people will say to me, well, what about why? And why is one of those questions. I highlight it in red just to remind me, because why is one of those questions that we are preconditioned to get defensive in response to being asked why. The only time you should use a why question is if you are using it in reverse. What does that mean? That means that if you would say to a client at the end of a call where it seems like everything's moving forward and you want to use it to get reassurance or reinforcement from them, you might say something like, well, why on earth would you choose to work with me? And then your client will jump to your defense. And it can be very powerful if you use it that way. But any other context for using why seems to flare up some form of defense mechanism. So I share that with you. Hopefully that's really useful for you. Get yourself conditioned to ask what or how questions. It will really make a difference to your sales process. Okay, so we've asked these questions. We understand what the customer needs. Now that we understand what the customer needs, that is the only point at which we should start to talk about our own solution and what it is that we offer the customer. And when we do that, we start to talk about how we can meet their needs. So this is what we have as a solution, and here's how it fits what you told me you needed. And it can be as simple as saying between one and the other, which means that. So our product or our service or my program will enable you to do X, Y, and Z, which means that you will be able to get what you told me you were looking for earlier. And you can link the two things and then do a sense check with your customer and move them forward. But the key principle here is that we should not be talking about our product, our service, our solution, no matter how good it is, until we've understood what the customer needs. We must put the customer's needs first and our solution second. And by taking that simple approach, the difference it will make to your ability to meet your customers' needs and move people from customer to client and increase your success rate is literally transformational. So if you have challenges in your process and you have been doing it in the reverse order, that will be the problem. Needs first, your solution next. And you will have noticed in the model that I shared earlier that the arrows circling that Inspire model were multi-directional between needs discovery and proposal agreement. And what that means is if you make a proposal, if you get to this point and you start to talk to your customer and you're saying, well, what about this? And this is how I think it fits. And you meet any resistance or objection, what it means is that you haven't sufficiently understood their needs and matched the solution to their needs. And you have to go back through the model. And you will be able to recover some of those situations, some of those sales meetings where you haven't been successful. If you go back through the process and take it back to a discussion about what they need, that is how you recover the position. And then you can take people back through the process. So I hope that makes sense. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, yeah, I've got this, I get it, I understand what we're saying. The final part then, one of our major issues was maintaining momentum after a client meeting. So my advice to anybody struggling with that area is not to wait. So don't wait until after the client meeting to struggle with maintaining momentum. When we're in the meeting, if you follow this process, if you've understood customers' needs, if you've agreed that your solution matches those needs, you've then made a firm proposal, the customer's agreed, and you've got clear actions, this will not be a problem. And the final thing we do in our sales process, I liken the sales process to the front seats of a car. Okay, so you have two seats in the front of a car. How many steering wheels are there in the front of a car? There are one. And as we're going through the sales process, only one person can control the direction, can control the vehicle, and that's you. And if at any point you are not in control, so if you are closing your meeting, you haven't summarized and you haven't said the next steps are, and my suggestion is that we reconvene or we meet again at this point, then you've just handed the wheel to your customer. And it's as simple as at the end of every single conversation, explaining what you see are the next steps, and then asking the customer, okay, when should we meet again to discuss this? And if you do that, maintaining momentum beyond the sale will no longer be a problem for you. So making sure that you get that commitment to the next step, even if it's just a check-in call, even if it's just an opportunity to talk for 5 minutes, but don't leave it to chance. Don't say, I'll call you in a couple of weeks. If it's a couple of weeks, what day on that week? What time on that day? Okay, what's the best number to get you on? Great, I'll send you a diary reminder. These are the things that maintain momentum. It doesn't happen after the meeting, it happens in the meeting. Okay, sorry, I was getting a bit preachy there. Okay, so we are through our process. We've got another poll coming up. Caroline, we have a poll. Oh, great, thank you, Caroline. Please tell us what you will do next. Will you apply the principles that you've learned? Will you apply some of what you've learned? Will you share it with other people in your organization? Will you look for help to apply these? Or will you need to close your eyes and lie down in a dark room? Okay, so click on your preference. Let's submit and let's see what we've got. I appreciate that was a whistle-stop tour. For many of you who are highly experienced in this area, you'll have thought, yeah, great, do you know what? It was a good recap and there are some areas I want to zero in on. For others of you, you may need a bit more depth, and if you wanted to do that, we can certainly help. So, how are we doing, Caroline?
Can I just make sure that everybody can actually see the poll, because nobody's actually answered?
Oh, I answered. I answered. Oh, Branko answered, yeah.
Oh, crikeys, okay.
Set.
Right, so it's saying that nobody's answered my end for some bizarre reason.
Ah, do you want to do it again?
I've answered as well.
Oh, thank you, Ryan.
Right, let me have, sorry everybody.
Okay, let's go again.
Right, have a go.
Yeah, please tell us what you'll do next. Okay. Tell us what you'll do next. Hit submit. This is like waiting for Christmas. I love it. I'm really excited.
I do seem to be having a bit of technical problem this end, but I'm hoping that it's collating them.
Okay.
When I end it and share it, I'm hoping it's going to say who's shown.
Fingers crossed.
Right, it's probably enough time, do you think?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay.
No, I do apologise. I don't know why that's doing that.
We've got it. I've got some results here, Caroline.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, yeah. So 53% I'll apply.
Oh, right.
25% I'll apply some of what I've learned. 19% I'll share with other people in my organisation. Great, thank you. And 3% need help. Thankfully, nobody needs to close their eyes and lie down in a dark room. Thank you very much. So thank you, Caroline. That was good. Okay, so before we go to Q&A, what can you do next? If anybody wants to reach out to me, if anybody wants a one-to-one growth strategy discussion, very happy to do that. The only caveat I offer is I am looking to work with leaders who are looking to inspire, grow, take action, and make an impact. So all of my clients are in that kind of category. So hopefully if that's you, feel free to reach out. I have been running a number of virtual workshops on transformation to virtual selling with different organizations. So if anybody wanted a discussion about that for your organization, please let me know. If you would like a copy of the slides, please do email or direct message me at justinlee@focusforgrowth.co.uk. And I'm building out a sales acceleration program pilot at the moment. So if anybody's interested in a pilot blended online virtual coaching program for their organization, let me know. I'd be interested to have a discussion about that with you. So that's what we can do next. Here's some client feedback. So if you want the slides, I'll send you this and you can look at these in more detail, but these are what my clients are saying about me. It's very kind of them. And here's some of the brands that I've been working with. So let's go to, if everybody that has a webcam can put their webcam on, we'll go to gallery view and take a photo. Oh, God, you're a beautiful bunch of people. Ah, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Let me just, let me get my screen grabber. Ah, perfect. Excellent. Right. Ah, and you all got dressed this morning. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Okay, I've got a snap of that. I will put it on the social channels. Thank you, everybody. Excellent. Good. Right, guys. Let's go to a Q&A. So, Chris, you were going to.
We've got a couple. Yeah, a couple of people have asked for a copy of the slides, and Caroline's already said that we'll share the slides and a copy of the presentation to everybody that's attending the webinar later.
Perfect.
First question was quite early on from somebody who owns a jewellery business. Do you think that it would be helpful for them?
Yeah, it's, what sort of jewellery business is it? Is it shop-based or online?
Don't know the answer. Perhaps we can ask. Forgive me, I've lost the name. That was quite early on. Lisa?
Lisa.
You still with us, Lisa? Can you unmute yourself and ask?
Can't. So I would say yes. The answer, the principles will work. Think about the process. Think about how you generate leads. And the best way to generate leads is to create value up front, engage with clients. And once you've got people engaged and on it and going through a process with you, then you earn the right to be able to provide them with a solution and have this conversation about how you move them through the sales process. But you can't do it unless you've warmed them first. I think one of the challenges that many of us have in sales roles is that if we're trying to sell to a customer that doesn't have some form of relationship with us, doesn't see us as credible, hasn't already had some form of experience, they're not just going to buy. So we have to take people through this nurturing process up front. And then once we have them in a position where they want to purchase, we have to have a conversation with them and make sure that the two things join up. What we're offering meets their needs. It's quite straightforward. It does mean that we're going to talk to a lot of people that probably aren't quite the right fit for us. And that's fine. That's why we have to put in place a process that enables us to get to yes or no quite quickly. So I hope that helps.
Next question, Justin, is what sales solutions would you recommend for SMEs, larger multinational organizations today? Oftentimes there is a shift towards specific CRM solutions.
Oh, so is that a CRM system question? Just can you repeat the start again, Chris?
Yeah, what sales solutions would you recommend for SMEs, larger multinational organizations?
Sales solutions. Does that mean I'm questioning the term sales solutions? Who asked the question, Chris?
One thing I've learned is to make sure I copy people's names as well as the question. So if you answer that question, feel free to unmute yourself and chip in.
Hi, Justin. My name is Ahima. I asked a question.
Okay, hi.
Yeah, I represent a company called E&E Business. So we're a digital service company, so specialized around software development expertise and managed services. So my question simply sits around what sales solutions. Sometimes you might have like sales leads, but you need probably a cloud or sales solution which you use to manage your pipeline. So that keeps you up to speed in terms of when you engage with them, the notes or engagement that may have happened, and the next point of actions and things like that.
Okay.
So the CRM, so it's pretty much more what's your take.
Okay, so it's much more about how you manage the process and the documentation of the process, actions, that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different options out there, Emmy. I would say, you know, many of my clients are using Salesforce. So Salesforce is a pretty comprehensive platform, and you can tailor it to the process that you're following. But I've got people on HubSpot as well. HubSpot's a good platform. There's lots of different options. I would say what's going to be most beneficial is the one that, one, meets your budget, two, will be flexible enough to follow your process, and two, is one that you really like, because different companies and different people like different platforms. So it's not a distinct answer for you, but there's plenty of CRM solutions out there that will do the work for you. I would say just make sure that you get the skills of your people aligned with the platform as well, because it's not always the CRM that's the key distinction. It's actually getting the sales process right alongside the CRM. Hope that helps.
Okay. Yeah, it does.
We'll ask you second question, Emmy.
Oh yeah, the second question has to do with just a minute.
Yeah.
I think the second question has to do with the frequency of engagement with your potential leads. How often? What would you recommend? Would that be on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis? Just to build on a rapport and also to identify new opportunities.
Yeah, great question, Amy. I think so it will depend on the client and how engaged they are. So I have clients who at the start of the process will want to speak to me probably every other day as we start to map something out. I have other clients who I'm checking in with, once a week, every couple of weeks. For me, it depends how quickly your client wants to move. How urgent is their particular need for what you're offering? And be guided by that. So ask that question: how urgent is this for you? How quickly do we want to get from where we are today to working together? And once you understand that, then you can start to fit your engagement and interactions alongside what your client has told you. So sometimes you can take a leading position and say, well, actually, if you want it done more quickly, we can do X, Y, and Z, but it will be very much client dependent. I hope that helps.
It does. Thanks so much.
Justin, Dean asks, what do you see as the main difference, if any, to the approach when your sales process has a distribution channel in it, and hence you're not directly connected to the end customer?
Yeah, great question, Dean. So I've worked in a lot of businesses where we work with distributors. So I would say you have to do two things. It's an obvious statement. You've got to focus predominantly on your end user demand. Okay, so you want to get that pull through your distribution channel. So you need to make sure you've got a way to generate end user demand, and then you're managing your distributor as a key account, as a service provider to your client, end user client. And it's making sure that you get the balance right. So my view always has been that you have to put the end user first, and the distributor then is the way to service your offering to the client. So it's about managing the distributor, engaging the end user. And there are probably people on this call who work in the IT channel, and in the IT channel there are two steps. There are a distributor and a reseller into your end user. So even more important in those situations where you've got, you're managing the distributor relationship to make sure that you've got a flow of product in there, that they are supportive, and that they're not looking to switch you out with other suppliers' products. Then you've got to manage potentially a reseller relationship, which is about helping them with skills and knowledge to sell your product on. And then you've got to think about how you create that pull into your end user. So I hope that answers the questions for Dean.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. The final question was, when does your program start? But if I can encourage people to get in direct contact with you to discuss how to get involved with that.
Yeah, please.
Conscious we're seeing people drop off now. We're at 10 o'clock. So
yes, sure.
Just to wrap up, Justin, thank you very much. That was really interesting.
Pleasure.
Very energetic as well for 9 o'clock in the morning. So much appreciated. Thank you.
Did my best. Thank you, Chris.
Everybody's still online. Can I do some housekeeping here? Can I encourage you all to look at the IOD Coronavirus Support Hub, which is constantly kept up to date with the latest information. IOD East also runs a daily briefing every day at 12 o'clock noon. It's scheduled for half an hour. It typically takes about 15 minutes, so feel free to dial into that. There's all kinds of online events going on. Of course, one benefit of the current situation is that geography doesn't confine us. So I'd encourage you all to look at the events around the regions. Today we've got the briefing, as I said. We've also got another event at 12:30 on how to use your time and come out of this stronger. Tomorrow there's also an IOD policy event at 1 o'clock, so you can hear directly from HMRC, who will be with the policy team on that. And anybody that's looking to join the IOD or has joined the IOD, on the 6th of May, IOD London are doing a new members event. So it's a good opportunity to hear about all the services and benefits of the IOD membership. But other than that, thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Justin. Have good days.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Caroline, as well. Take care, everybody.